Hi, I'm Pati and welcome back to A Small Geeky Chica. So for today, we're going to be going over how I made my little Star Cafe intro zine. So as you can see, this is a little homemade zine that introduces all my Star Cafe crew members. And I decided I wanted to make this because even though I have a lot of fun drawing these characters, I bet most of you don't know who they are or much about them. And once when I was at a market recently, someone asked me if I made a comic of them while they were looking at my stickers, and I figured I should at least have a little intro zine so you can get to know each of the characters. And for me to actually get to know more of the characters, because I have vague ideas about all of them, but I would like to develop them a little bit more. So I did record a little bit of my progress while making that, so we're just gonna go over this whole project and you get to know my little Star Cafe crew a little bit along the way. So before I got to this final draft, it started a little bit something like this, which I don't know if you can see my sketches very much. But once I had the idea that I wanted to make a zine, I looked up how to make a couple of easy ones at home, just using regular printer paper. And so I tried to plan it out first, just kind of making thumbnails, but I realized it was a lot easier if I just made myself kind of a template and then went off that. So this is my original cover art. The characters are moved around, but I started there. And then I measured the size just to know how much actual spacing I would have in them. And you're getting a little bit more of a sneak preview. So once I had that down, I actually moved over to my sketchbook. So from this, I went to this where I decided to figure out exactly how I wanted to place all the information in each individual page. I decided I kind of wanted to go kind of like a trading card kind of look layout. So this was the very first one I made with Emilia. As you can see, I measured, I think I just put this here and then drew it around and then kind of measured the actual spacing I would have and then gave myself kind of a border, like a little bleed. And so this isn't actually too far removed from what my actual final design ended up being, but I started with this. I knew I wanted kind of a headshot bust kind of profile image of them. I knew I wanted to include their favorite fruits, because that is something I know very much about them. Their name, which I had to give them all last names because up until this point nobody had a last name. Their exact position at the cafe, some of their likes, dislikes, and a mini bio. So this is very similar to what I ended up with, but then I drew kind of a little different ones, just being do I want to have their ages on them, how much spacing do I actually want to have for their bio, do I want it as all one block or separate little blocks. So you're starting to see more or less what it would end up. There's one up here too, and this one was a really random where it's just maybe I just have them as all text bubbles around them, but I did not go with the idea. So from that, I took my sketchbook and I actually started doing it inside of my little sample prototype here, where I took a ruler and measured out spacing a little bit and started to draw more or less what they would look. I didn't draw the character art, just a little blob in there to see what the spacing would actually look like. So I drew a couple of different versions, tried it like this. Maybe I want more spacing for them, but I didn't really incorporate their likes and dislikes here, so I tried it here. And then I just didn't like how this was going either. So ultimately, this is more or less the layout I ended up going with. So for their two little fruits, and then the fruit by their bio, their position at work, their little bio, their likes and dislikes, and I ended up using this icon for their dislikes. As you can see here, I was trying to figure out a broken heart or a little angry veins, and I ended up with this sign that I think worked better. So yeah, that was all I did to start out with. Once I had the layout more or less figured out, then it was down to character art, which I did record. So now I'm going to switch over to do a voiceover over what I was sketching, and we'll talk about the characters a little bit there. So of course, the very first character I ended up sketching was Emilia. I think if you've learned anything about these characters, is that they were originally based off farming sim idea that I had a while ago, where it wasn't just like regular farming animals, it was supposed to be like dragons and a whole bunch of mythical creatures. That eventually evolved with those characters I created for that into my Star Cafe crew. A good chunk of them passed over into my little cafe concept and idea that I do a lot of art for. Some of those characters haven't fully crossed over yet, but will eventually as regulars for the cafe. But first I was just focusing on the staff. So since Amelia is the very first character ever created, of course I usually start with her for all my designs. And I didn't know exactly what kind of posing I wanted for their character art. I didn't know if I wanted it all to be frontal facing or like 3/4. I did know that I wanted them to be in their cafe uniform, since this is the first time I'm introducing them kind of more formally, and including their position at the cafe and all of that. So I definitely wanted them to be wearing their shirt and their apron. But other than that, I didn't really have many other ideas, except that it's like waist up, basically. So I just started originally with some of Amelia just kind of waving and saying hello, but I was never fully satisfied with those sketches, even though I tried it a couple of different ways. I didn't try too many concepts that way, but I just wanted to like show up how her energy and how she is a more upbeat and cheerful girl. So I tried that a couple of ways. But yeah, even with these, I wasn't super satisfied. But I had something to go, and I decided, wait, let me actually switch over to a different character maybe to get a good idea. And of course, my second character is always Emilio, her twin brother. And so he's a little bit more shy, more reserved. So I gave him a little bit of a more shy pose. But then I don't know if I drew Amelia with it first, or I thought about it for Amelia, but it was like, oh, you know, one of the ideas that I have for them that a comic I might want to draw in the future includes them like being after hours and cleaning up the shop. And so I just had that image of them with a broom and working in the shop. So I said, well, that's something I can use for all the characters and kind of give them all a prop to use that kind of unites them beyond just the uniform and the fact they all work at the same cafe. So I drew this one with Emilia, where she is with her broom kind of in her hand and her pose, and she's like more confident. And then that led me to Emilio with him a little more reserved. It looks like he's actually kind of cleaning up a little bit. And then of course I had Luca, who wants to be an idol. He wants to be a singer, so he's using his broom as a mic and singing while they're cleaning up. So that made it a little bit easier for me to decide, oh yeah, okay, this is kind of the idea that I want to have for their poses for this comic, just showing off their personality a little bit by how they interact with the broom and how they're like looking straight at the reader in this case. So it made it easier to then go off and see what the other characters would look like since I had those three done. And I feel like those three, Luca and Freddy, are interchangeable as my like third one, but I always tend to draw those a lot first. So then of course I drew my boy Freddy, who is kind of my little more grumpy boy who's a little more serious, but is always kind of also smirking and having a good time with his co-workers. He is a year older than Emilio, and Luca, who are all the same age, but they all get on great. And then I drew Boa, who is the second oldest amongst these five. I think she and Freddy are about around the same age. They're in the same school year of college. And by the way, these are all college students, so this is their part-time job at the cafe. But that's something I did go up figuring out as I was drawing these. I was also writing their profiles, which I had to kind of figure out for the first time, really. I had vague ideas. I knew they were all college students, and I knew they were like in mid-college and that they worked at a cafe as a part-time job to help with the expenses and stuff. I knew that Melody who is the baker, and Manuel, who's the co-owner of the cafe, or the older of the gang. So, but they get along really well with their college students, coworkers, and a lot of the people that come, the regulars to the cafe, are all students because it's very much close to campus. But then I had to figure out, during college, I wanted to know, what are they majoring in? And then I had to figure out a lot more if there's likes and dislikes, because I knew what fruits they liked, and I knew what coffee they liked, but I actually hadn't thought at the point of so many other things they like or dislike. I knew that Amelia doesn't like wearing pants. She loves wearing skirts and dresses, and she's okay with shorts, but for some reason she really doesn't like pants, but she has to wear them as part of her uniform and things like that. I had big ideas about all these characters, and I finally started having to like solidify some of them all, and that was really important. But I still had to keep their bios relatively short because the spacing in the layout isn't that big to begin with. So yeah, I also had to keep it to like 2 or 3 sentences, and also like 2 or 3 likes and dislikes per person. But it was fun because it was a good exercise for me to get to know my characters a little bit more, because I do want to continue to use them in all my sticker designs, and maybe do other little zines with the like little cute comic ideas. But I'm not gonna make a webcomic or anything for that. I don't envision that. This is very much an art project, but I do want to do little stories of them so everyone can get to know them. And I do have some ideas. I don't know where I'm going to go with them eventually, because apart from being a farming sim originally, most farming sims nowadays, like Stardew and Harvest Moon and all that stuff, have a dating sim component to them. So that was also part of the idea for that, and I think that is carrying over to them, where Emilia and Amelia are your MCs basically, and then everyone else is a romance candidate. So the comics or the little zines I make might revolve around that, because that was the idea. But mostly I find them as more of an art project, more of a sketching and drawing and making merch in terms of stickers and washi tapes and stationery items, sticky notes and stuff like that, more than just having like a full out story. But anyway, and here we have Melody, who's the only one who's not going to be having a room, because since she's the baker, I thought it would be better to show her with some baked goods. So here she is with a tray of bread rolls. So she's looking very cute, and I very much like this sketch of Melody much more than the actual coffee sticker that I had. And they'll have very similar expressions, but yeah. And I find that I tend to draw Freddy with the same expression, so I think I need to spice him up a little bit. But yeah, once I had all the sketches done and good, I started drawing them all digitally on my iPad. I wanted to keep kind of a black and white theme going on for these zines, so I definitely didn't really include any other color besides, well, black and white. I will try and use the same pen that I used for their coffee stickers, which is probably the type I'm gonna stick mostly for these characters, which is a different pencil that I used, brush that I used for their fruit onesie stickers. And I am gonna bring that idea back. I'm concepting that Amelia at one point had a dream that they were all like fruits, and then of course, so she told Amelia all about it, and then they started an art project. So that's kind of based on her dream and his art coming together and then making a project, brother and sister, really cute. So that might be drawn in a different kind of style compared to my usual stickers, but most of them I'll be keeping in this kind of art style. I was also deciding how I wanted to shade their hair, and this is more or less where I'm coming up. And I do want to show the different, like, I don't want them all to have either purely black hair or purely white hair. I did want to kind of, even though it's in black and white, show that they have different hair colors a little bit. I don't know if that came across that great, but this is where I ended up going with different levels of gray, depending on how dark or light their hair color was. And like for Freddy, his hair is actually red, but so I wanted something not so dark, not so light. And then once I actually had them all drawn out, I did have a layout that I had pre-prepared in Photoshop just to get the right sizing for all the little blocks. So then I don't keep the shrink down version that I'm making in Procreate. I export the whole finished drawing to Photoshop and scale it down there. But in Procreate, I would create a copy just to see how they looked within the boundaries of the layout. So just to get a little view before. And then once I had all the characters done, I made all the fruits, and all of those then went over to Photoshop, where I finally started putting everything together. So once I had all the characters done, I did take them into Photoshop, and that's when I started putting all the text in and the fruits, and I decided to use their fruits as kind of a little pattern behind them just to spice up that space a little bit more. But then I realized that with a lot of these bios that I had written, some of them were not fitting in the space I had for them. So I had to slightly rewrite things or maybe take out a word here and there. So hopefully they still make sense and were coming across as I originally wrote them. But it just didn't fit in the space, and I didn't want to make the text too incredibly small where it was hard to read. I mean, I do think it's still kind of on the smaller side, but it is legible. But yeah, there was a lot of fussing around that I had to do with that layout, because that's what happens when you write the text before you actually know how many characters can fit in the space, especially like with the fruit in the corner that was taking up a little bit of that, but it worked. So not everyone's text is actually the same size for their likes and their dislikes, and some of them I had to shrink down because they were much longer. Some of them could be a little bit bigger and take up more space because they were shorter, but it all worked out in the end. I was able to get everyone to fit on their page, and then after that I realized I had to do the cover. So the cover was kind of on the easier side in the sense that I had an idea for it. So I just took that idea, made little cute heads out of everyone, and then of course I put the owner of the cafe, Manuel, in the center, and then all his staff all around him, and then I try to alternate it between girl boy, just to not put too many in the same spot together. And then I had to figure out the best way to put them based on their hair. Like Melody worked best on the bottom just because her hair takes up more space than some of the other ones. So that was fun doing all the character art. But once that was done, then I could actually finally start laying it out on a big piece of paper. So I was doing these all page by page, but ultimately when I print it out, it's going to be all on one size. So that is where things got a little more complicated. Okay, so even though I had done my little prototype and I had measured it and gave myself a little bit of a bleed for when I was actually designing everything, I do know that my printer sometimes doesn't print the scale quite right. So I know sometimes it feels like it takes off like a 1/16 of an inch at the bottom of my printing, so that you don't want to actually print at 100%, want to print at like 99% for width, because it's just funky like that. So as you can see with this first one that I printed, the very end, this is just too much towards the left, and it comes out this part first, and this is the end to it. So you can see it's like pretty much off the page. I didn't print everything. This orange got cut off, and this is much too close to the edge. So it was much too close to the edge. So what that results in after is also these folds are way too off-centered as well. So then I decided to shrink down my design just a little bit so that the printer could print it well. And so we got to version number 2, which is still a little bit cut off, but just not as much as version 1. So this spacing actually looks good, but Luca is still his orange is still being cut off, so it's a little bit better. It's almost there. And then this still is, the fold ends up being way too close to these fruits on those guys as well. So we had to move it a little bit more. The scale was good, I just need to move the placement in the actual file. So then we got to this one, which is the final layout for that. And as you can see, there's a lot more space between the fruits and the edge of the folds. So that's looking better. and then Luca's orange has more space between the end of the page. So I was gonna go with this, but then I realized that actually, because there's 7 characters, the very last page ends up being one of the characters. Originally, I had a thought to put Emilio and Emilia on the same page, but then I thought that's not fair. They're just because they're twins, they shouldn't only get one page and everybody else gets their own page. So it has a cover, and then just Manuel is the very back page. But then I don't have anything that says who I am on it. Like, I don't have nothing that says about my shop or me as an artist. So even though I wanted this kind of as a promotional piece, I'm like, I don't intend to sell this. I give these away for free. I needed something that would bring them, whoever buys this or whoever gets one of these, back to me. So I decided to add my website at the very bottom. So this is the final version, which has asmallgeekychica.com here, and that is my branding for this. But then that worked out well. So then we have Emilia and Emilio. We have enough spacing and their little descriptions. Boa and Luca. So I did decide to go girl, boy, and then I did boy, girl, and then boy at the end. The only reason I switched those at the end was because Melody is not one of those college students. She is one of the older characters. I mean, she's still only in her mid-20s, but she's one of the older characters in Star Cafe. And I knew for sure I wanted to end with Manuel. So I ended up putting Freddy on this side. I could have kept it boy, girl if I had started with Emilio, but I always start with Emilia because she is the original first character that I created. So I always start with her. And then usually I put Boa towards the end because she is the very last character that joined the crew. But then that would have put Freddy, and it would have been girl, boy, 2 boys, 2 girls, and a boy at the end. Which would have been fun, but I know I want to kind of switch back and forth between the two. So I ended up going with this design instead. But yeah, it took me a while to get used to folding them. So I'll include some video of me actually folding all the zines here because my original deadline for this zine was to get it ready for my July market because I wanted to have it as a prize for my spinning wheel at that market. And which I did, and it went well, but then I decided I was gonna fold about 30 of these. So I was having a lot of printing to do and a lot of folding to do. I did manage to fold 30 of them and ended up giving away about 10 of them as prizes for my spinning wheel. I am also intending to give them away at markets to anybody who buys a Star Cafe related sticker. So if they buy any of my Fruit Onesie stickers, my coffee stickers, or those coffee sheets, those sticker sheets, and maybe washi tapes that are related to Star Cafe crew, they get one. For sure 100% if they buy any of the stickers of these characters, just so they can get to know them. I'm also gonna include them on my website. If anybody buys a sticker that is one of these characters, they'll get one for free. I eventually want to make more different zines because there's only so many times I can give the introductory one, right? I have ideas. I'm deciding how I want to draw them. Do I want to do them more comic based? Do I want to do them more like prose, a little bit more like a light novel, or it's like there's prose and then there's like one big image and prose. So I'm just deciding how I want to do that. But yeah, this is the very first zine I did, and I don't think it's the best in the world, but I'm proud of getting it done. I set out to do this project and I accomplished it. I don't know in the end result if I'm super happy with this kind of layout and style, but it exists, and that's the most important thing. I tried it, I did it, it is done, it exists, and now I have something to give away. When people ask me about my characters, I'm like, here you go, you can learn about my characters. And I went to a garage sale while I was helping my uncle recently, and I was able to give some of these away as well, just having them for free for people to take. And I think I took 20, and I ended up with only 3 left over. So now I have a whole bunch more I need to print out and get ready for my next market in September. But that's pretty much it with this first zine. And the folding is not so great on some of them, but I was still learning, and it's a handmade zine, so, and of course, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to exist. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I hope you consider liking and subscribing. I post videos every Tuesday at 11 a.m. There'll usually be sketch with me videos. Sometimes I'll do some sketchbook tours like I did last week. And I also do Stationery Shop diaries, where I give you little updates of everything that's coming up with my shop, projects I'm working on, markets I'm going to, and just any news that I want to give out to all of y'all. Next week will probably be another sketch with me video before I get to one of those again. If you do want this Meet the Star Cafe Crew intro zine, you can go to my website, asmallgeekychica.com, buy any stickers that are relating to these characters, and you will get them in your order for free. That's it for today. I hope to see you next week and every week after that at A Small Geeky Chica. Bye bye!